If you've been known occasionally to put off your bookkeeping, you are not alone. Bookkeeping is not the most exciting thing in the world, and to be honest, even I, a person who loves numbers, puts it off from time to time. But I've personally found that since switching from QuickBooks Online to Xero this year, I've actually kept up a lot more with my bookkeeping than usual. And some of that is because I feel like it's a lot more user-friendly, and it's actually a lot quicker for me in Xero than it was in QuickBooks Online. So make sure to watch this, because today I am going to actually do a walkthrough of what I do each month for my bookkeeping and a lot of the tips and tricks that I have realized and have started using in my own bookkeeping that can help save you time. So whether you are trying to catch up on the last month or maybe all the way back to January 1st, don't worry, no judgment. I've got you, and I'm going to show you how to do it without giving up your entire weekend to make it happen. Hey friends, I'm Jamie Trull, CPA and financial educator, and on this channel, I bring you all the things you need to keep you informed, organized, and profitable in your business finances. So please make sure to hit that subscribe button. And make sure to stay until the end, because I'm going to show you the number one thing you can do in Xero to make sure your books are accurate and find any costly mistakes before we get to tax filing season. Now, before we jump into the full walkthrough, if you have not yet signed up for Xero and are considering it, please make sure to use my link. We have some special deals that you will not get directly on the Xero website. We have specially negotiated them for our audience. So go to jamietrull.com/Xero to see the current deal. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss out on it. So now I've jumped into the demo company, and we're going to walk through what I actually do each month when I am catching up on my bookkeeping. So in here, you can see that when we go to this dashboard, one of the first things you'll typically see, unless you've customized it, and you can move things around however you want to. However, what you'll see is likely a listing of your checking accounts, your bank accounts, and your credit cards. And you're going to see what the statement balance is and what the balance in Xero is, and if there's a difference. And likely, if there's a difference, you're probably going to see a place to go ahead and reconcile those items outstanding. So you can either go ahead and click on that, or you can go up to accounting and go to bank accounts, and it's going to take you to a similar place where you can see all of those bank accounts and see how many transactions you need to reconcile. So I'm going to go ahead and click reconcile 29 items. So here's the screen you're going to go to. And if you're in Xero, you're probably familiar with this. And so you're going to see each transaction. These are the transactions that are coming from your bank statements. And then essentially you're going to match each of those with a transaction in Xero. So some of them will have pre-populated, and I'm going to show you some tricks to make sure even more pre-populate, but some will have pre-populated and some of them won't. And so you're going to go through that, and you're going to accept the transactions. And for the ones that don't have any coding, you can add coding. Now, before I go through that, I want to show you some of these other cool features, because this actually took me a while to realize this existed in Xero. And once I did, it was a total game changer. So that's the Reconcile tab. I usually do start here and go through and accept things like this that I know are being matched with other transactions or transfers that have been identified. So I'll go through and just make sure those are correct and match those. But then I'll often go to this cash coding tab. And I think this is just genius, and it's very different. It's something that I wish existed in this way in QuickBooks Online. And when I saw it in here, I just thought it was absolutely genius. So this is a different way of looking at it. So you can see all 29 on one quick screen right here. And notice that we have several that are the same, right? So on this tab, we can actually do bulk actions that are going to be much faster. So you'll notice that only a few of these actually have accounts that are already pre-populated. One of the things that we're going to go and do is create some additional rules that will make it such that more of this will pre-populate. But if you're trying to catch up and you don't really have time to do all of those rules, so what we can go ahead and do is we can do this in bulk. So see, there's multiple things that are listed as central city parking. So you might even have months of transactions coming through, and you can go ahead and actually just click on those. And then what you can do is either apply a rule, right? So if you have a rule, you can go ahead and apply that if it didn't apply. Or you can just click and say you're going to assign this to a specific account, and look, it will go ahead and assign it to all of the ones that you had checked, which is awesome. And then similarly, if you have set up any kind of tracking categories, I actually have a whole video on tracking categories because I love them so much. But if you have set up any tracking categories, it doesn't have to be region, you can have your own. But in this case, they used region. You can do the same thing here. And if you want to go ahead and assign a tracking category, it'll assign it to all of them that you have checked. So this is a really easy way to do things quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and press Save and Reconcile selected. Okay, and then they should disappear off of here because they're no longer uncoded. Those have now been coded. And so you're going to see them showing up over on this account transactions as coded, right? So now they're saying they are reconciled. When Xero says they're reconciled, that just means that we have essentially accepted, we've coded them to a category and we've accepted these transactions that came in through our bank account. So that cache coding is one way to make a lot of transactions go a lot faster. You don't have to go down one by one like you would maybe on this reconcile tab. Instead of going in here and having to type in something each and every time and re-add it in, you can do that in bulk. Now, like I said, before I even do cache coding though, I will typically go through and match up anything that is already being suggested for me. So it will change color if there's already a suggestion and there will be an OK button. So in that case, I'll go down through and it looks like this is matching up a payment that exists. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to accept those. Again, make sure that it makes sense and that it tracks with what you think that it will. Again, this now, it's not colored, but you can see there's an OK button. That's because there's a rule involved. So you can see the apply rule 711. You can click on this rule if you want to review it and make sure that it still applies and it's the right rule, or you can edit the rule in here, right? And rules are an amazing way to be able to make this so much faster as well. So I'm going to show you how to create rules because that's another great way to do this really fast. So if we scroll down, one thing you'll notice is I accidentally didn't accept one of the central city parkings on the cache coding tab. So it's still sitting here to be selected. But you'll notice now, unlike before, it's actually suggesting an account. And that's because it's using its smart AI and it's remembering that you had just reclassified all of those central city parking as travel. And so it's going to go ahead and suggest that for you, which is great. And it's already pre-populated as well, the tracking category to agree with what we had previously. So one thing that I like to do though, so that, each and every single month, I don't have to go in and test this and make sure it's coming through right, I will often go in and create a rule. So you can do that under options, create bank rule. And you'll see you can have spend money rules, receive money rules, and transfer money rules. Most of mine are spend money rules. And what you can do is set parameters, right? So you'll want to check these and just make sure that the parameters make sense. It's going to pre-populate it for you, but sometimes you might need to change things to make it a little bit looser because sometimes the parameters will be a little bit too stringent and it could miss things. So for instance, here we're saying if the payee equals central city parking, you could also add a condition if you wanted it. Maybe you have a couple different types of transactions with central city parking. Some of them are parking and some of them are something else. And so what you can do here for the ones that are parking is you can say maybe, and the amount equals $12. So if you pay that every time, you might add that. Or if you just want everything that's central city parking, regardless of the dollar amount, to be classified as travel, then you can X this out. So this is another thing you also might want to do contains. So I do contains, like let's say there was a number behind this, like a transaction reference number, then you might actually want to change this because you may not have future transactions may have a different number at the end of it, but still be central city parking and you still want them to be travel. So in that case, you might say, equals or contains and get rid of this number on the back of it. So just be mindful when you're setting these that you're looking at the conditions to make sure that when new transactions come in, it will pick them up as as something that should be subject to this rule. And then you're going to put in your contacts. So if you already have one, it'll show up. In this case, I do, or you could create a new one. And this is cool too. You can actually allocate line items. So right now it's just saying everything's going to go to, one account. But let's say we wanted half of this to go to travel for some reason. And then we wanted another half of it to go to, let's say, office expenses. I don't really know why in this case parking would go to office expenses, but just bear with me. Then we can put that 50% there, and it will actually split that for you. So you can put in a description of why you're splitting it, or this is maybe the central city parking, 50% to travel, right? So you can do this so that you remember exactly what it is. So if you have various different things that you like to split out, or maybe this all goes to travel, right? In this case, let's say this all goes to travel, but half of it is for, one tracking category and another half is for another, then you might do that. I do that. I actually have different divisions in my business that I use these tracking categories for. So sometimes I have expenses that I split between various different tracking categories, different divisions. And so I can actually set it up to do that. So sometimes I'll allocate out payroll to my different divisions for somebody who works on both divisions, right? I might split their time 50-50 so that it's popping up in the right division on my profit and loss. So there are lots of different ways that you can use this. Now I'm going to go back to just having this be 100% to travel like I did the other ones. And then again, you can decide, does this apply to just this checking account, to the savings account, or all bank accounts, no matter where you actually incur the expense. And then you can name the rule. So in this case, a lot of times I just put whatever, it typically comes up as, but if you have multiple different rules, you might put more of a descriptor in there, and then you can save it. And the great thing now is you're seeing that it is suggesting the rule already for you. And in the future, whenever you have a similar expense, it is going to already have this rule pre-populated. So like I said, we're going to go through and we're going to accept everything. Again, these are matches already. So we're going to go ahead and accept those, assuming it makes sense, what those matches are. And then again, here we have, this 7-Eleven, that's a rule. When it doesn't have the little blue thing right here, that means that it's just a suggestion. So you definitely want to check it and make sure that, yes, I agree with how it's categorizing this, and add any other information that you want in there. And then that's just going to leave us with a certain number of transactions that have not been accepted. And this is where I really go and use that cash coding section. So now in this cash coding, we can go down and do exactly what I showed you, which is we can accept anything that is going to actually be a similar categorization, right? So if you have multiple different things that actually are for similar items and will have a similar categorization, you can do this all at once. Let's say that these accounts are printing and stationery, right? We can go ahead and do that, and it's going to apply it to all of them. And then we can save and reconcile. So I'm going to go through and just quickly categorize the rest of these, and then I'll show you what the next steps are. So I just did all that in less than a minute. Obviously, if you have more transactions to go through, it'll take a little bit longer. But again, that bulk cash coding is going to be clutch when you are trying to do lots of different expenses quickly. And the other thing is, before you go ahead and press save and reconcile all, here's a recommendation I have for you. This is a little hack. So if you did this and for example, every single time that this ACL conferences comes up in the future, you want it to go to travel, you can go ahead even from this screen and press this button and create bank rule. You can also split this if you want it to be in multiple different accounts. You can split it. But again, we can go here and we can create yet another bank rule so that next time it will be a lot easier. Here's one of those examples where you may want to remove this. So you have payee equals, and then it's going to give you a description, and that's really specific. So maybe that number changes every single time. And if we put this in here, it is not going to catch that it should be categorized to this bank rule. So a lot of times I will go ahead and delete anything that's overly specific when I'm doing a rule like this. So I just went ahead and accepted all of those transactions I just coded. And you can see we get a little bit of a thing that says, great job, you've reconciled all transactions for this account. Again, that just means that we've categorized them. We do still need to reconcile the period, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But before we get there, I want you to also see, if we go to account transactions, you can now see all of these and they should all say reconciled. Now, if you realize, I actually messed something up and I didn't categorize that correctly, that's okay. You can go into that and you can actually go to options and you can unreconcile, you can edit the transaction, or you can remove and redo. So I typically just unreconcile. It's going to give you a note. And then when you've done that, and you go back to the main tab, you will see it showing up now on the Reconcile tab as unreconciled. So you can change anything if you wanted to, or find a different match or something like that. So once I've gone through one account and accepted transactions and categorized things, then I'm going to go through any other accounts that I might have. So I might have other checking accounts or savings accounts or even credit card accounts that I can go through and do the same thing and go through each account transaction and use those reconcile and cash coding codes to make sure everything is coded properly. So now that you've caught up on your bookkeeping, how are you supposed to know if it's actually correct? And this is where things can get tricky. Unfortunately, in any bookkeeping software, there is a lot of room for things that can go wrong, maybe just based on how you categorized it or how things were set up. And what we don't want to do is end up paying too little in taxes or too much in taxes because our bookkeeping was wrong. And that is where bank and credit card reconciliations come in. Now, Xero recently updated this feature and I really love what they did. So I'm going to walk you through how to use the reconciliation feature and what exactly to do if something does not reconcile. Now, remember, the purpose of reconciliation is to make sure that all of your bank and credit card transactions actually came through accurately to your financial statements and also weren't double counted. So we can do this by comparing our bank balances and our bank transactions to what we have in our accounting software. And Xero makes this super easy to do. So even if you haven't reconciled your bank account all year, I'm going to show you exactly what you can do now to find those problems or hopefully realize that everything is reconciling out and you're good to go. So the next step we're going to walk through is the process of reconciling the period. So this is going to help you make sure that everything that's on your bank statements or credit card statements has come through to your general ledger and that you don't have anything that's either missing or double counted. But before we get there, I want to give you actually a peek behind what I do first. So before I even do that, I want to make sure things are looking relatively how I would expect them to. And so once I've accepted transactions, now I can go to reporting and check out my financial statements. So I'll usually start with my income statement. And hopefully you have a decent idea of what your total income and total expenses should look like. And so you can take a look down through this and see if it looks like you expect it to, or if it's somehow wildly off. So if something is off, then this is a good place to go in. Maybe you see categories that should not be there, right? Like maybe you realize, why is this, consulting and accounting negative? That doesn't make any sense. You can actually click into this and take a look at how those transactions were coded. And so in this case, it looks like there was actually a credit that was received, and maybe this was miscategorized and should actually be showing up as income, or perhaps it actually is correct there and it was some kind of rebate that you got that should be showing up in consulting and accounting, but you can make that decision. But that's the first thing that I will typically do, is go through and choose a period. Maybe you choose just the period for the transactions you were just looking at, and make sure everything looks like you would expect it to, and to go ahead and drill in a little bit if anything looks out of place. And the other thing that I will do is I will go check out my balance sheet. Now, you may not be accustomed to really spending a lot of time on your balance sheet, but it is really helpful when we talk about reconciliation, because your balance sheet is going to give you a picture of your financial statements at a point in time, which is really beneficial because you can actually take those balances and compare it to what you are seeing elsewhere on your bank statement or your credit card statement and make sure that it looks correct. So for example, if we're running this as of the end of October 31st, 2025, again, we're looking at a point in time. So you want to make sure that you've accepted all the transactions before this. And you could look down and say, okay, does this look right? Is that what is actually in my checking account? If so, you're probably in good shape. If that agrees to your bank statement as of the end of October, you're probably golden. However, I'm still going to have you go through the reconciliation process. If that doesn't agree, and that is not uncommon to happen, sometimes it's normal, and because of some little timing things, sometimes there might be bigger issues at play. But if that doesn't agree, or if, let's say, your credit card balances, which will show up under your liabilities, don't agree, then we definitely need to spend some time reconciling the period. And that's going to help us ferret out what is causing this problem and figure out a way to fix it. So then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come back to our bank accounts tab, and we are going to now go over to reconcile period. And this is key. Now, typically you may not see anything here. I've already started this one, but typically you're going to go to create period, and you're going to determine your opening statement balance. Let's say in this case, I'm going to reconcile for the month of October through the current date. So I believe the last transactions I had brought in were through October 21st. Typically, I recommend doing, this on a monthly basis and aligning it with your bank statement date. That's going to make it easiest to reconcile. But in this case, let's say for some reason my bank statement date was, October 21st. So we're going to put in the opening balance on October 1st. And then the closing balance, which in this case was $46.35.64 on my bank account. And then we're going to hit start reconciling period. Now, I've already started this, so I need to come back over here, but you'll see I'm reconciling for October 1st through the 21st. Again, it probably makes more sense to do this monthly, but just for the sake of example, I'm going to do it through this. And when you come in here, the first thing I look at is this number right here. I want to see green. I want this to show me that there's no differences. Now, there is a difference that you can see here. The longer time period that you have up here that you're reconciling for, the more likely there is to be a difference. So if you wait 9 months to reconcile and you're trying to reconcile 9 months of transactions at one time, it's more likely that there's going to be issues that crop up. So you might want to instead, if you do that, you might want to actually go back in time and start with January and do a January reconciliation, or maybe a Q1 reconciliation to see how that goes, so that you can try to figure out where the issue is coming from. But in this case, I know that my issue is within these timeframes. So I'm going to take a look and try to figure out what is causing this $200 difference. So when I scroll down, I'm going to see all the different transactions that came in that I categorized when I was doing my bookkeeping. And you'll see that I have the check marks on here, which means they're part of the reconciliation. So it's pulling in all the activities. It's going to look at these dates and pull in all the activities between October 1st and October 21st, typically. And what I'll notice when I go down here, the very first place that I like to look, because if you're just looking for a $200 difference, it could take a minute, especially if you have a lot of transactions, look at the beginning of the period and at the end of the period. If maybe at the beginning of the period, you have a leftover transaction from, say, September that didn't get reconciled, it might be sitting there and not have a check mark on it. So if you check it, that might bring your difference down. Or at the same time, you might go to the end of the period and see, okay, on the last day or two of the period, maybe there's a transaction that came through in Xero but didn't actually hit my bank statement just yet, right? Maybe it's going to show up because sometimes there's a couple of day delay in the timing of those cash payments. So in this case, that's exactly what happened. I see that I had a expense on October 21st of $200. It's great when it matches like that. And if I uncheck this, that means don't include this. Essentially, it's going to roll this over to the next month, and that should pick up in the next month's bank statement. So if I come up here, now I can see that the balances match. Yay, rah. And then when I'm done with that, I can click close period. Now, I'll be the first to admit that it isn't always quite that easy. Sometimes, again, it is a little bit more delving into the numbers that you have to do in order to find an issue. If you have significant issues, it might be time to enlist a bookkeeper to help you figure those out and figure out why it happened so that you can prevent it from happening again. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to close my period. And then it's going to show that this is a closed period. So that means I've reconciled my bank accounts through October 21st, and I can have confidence that what is showing on my financial statements is correct. It's not missing any transactions, and it's not double counting any transactions, which is what we want to see. So hopefully this video showed you how quick and easy it can be to catch up on your bookkeeping in Xero. And I highly recommend getting into the groove of doing this each and every month, because then you won't have to scramble to get everything together and to figure it all out at tax time. Using a smooth process flow like the one that I just showed you in order to keep up with your bookkeeping is going to be key to making sure that you can keep up with it year round. Not only that, I love Xero's interface. It makes it super easy, especially with all the different rules that you can utilize, and that will cut down on the amount of time it takes you each and every month. Not only that, they have a great mobile app where you can keep up with things on the go. Now, if you're still trying to decide if Xero is right for you, don't worry, I've got you. I recently did a video that actually compares QuickBooks Online and the experience that I had using that for 6 years and my experience in Xero. So you can see a little bit more about how they compare if you're trying to decide if you want to switch from QuickBooks Online, or if you're trying to decide between signing up for QuickBooks Online or for Xero. And of course, if you do choose to sign up for Xero, go to jamietrull.com/Xero to do that so that you can get in on those special deals and discounts. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.